Ray Delgado paid $400 in federal tax stamps to end up with one suppressor he actually shoots. $200 for the can he bought first, and $200 more for the can he bought 18 months later to replace it. I had that first can of his apart on my counter the week he brought it back in, baffle stack in a parts tray, carbon on my thumbs, mount threads already chewed, nothing wrong with the tube. The tube was never the problem. The problem was the mount. He'd bought into one company's proprietary attachment system, and when they rolled out the next flagship modular, the brake he needed quietly went scarce and the adapters stopped making sense. That's the villain in this whole category, and it isn't a person. It's an upgrade cycle. A new flagship every 18 months, a new mount ecosystem attached to it, and the dealers and the gun magazines downstream getting paid to call that progress. Nobody at that counter is lying to you. They are working a margin sheet and you are standing on the wrong side of it. Ray wasn't stupid. Ray was sold the second can before he ever finished paying for the first. Now here's what actually changed. As of January 1st of this year, the federal transfer tax on a suppressor, that $200 stamp, went to zero. That's the biggest shift in how ordinary people buy these things in 90-odd years. And here is what did not change. So write this one down. You still file an ATF Form 4. You still pass a background check. It still gets registered. The fee is gone. The paperwork, the weight, and the federal registry are all still sitting right where they were. Your state gets a vote, too. These are not legal everywhere. Federal law can change again, and I am not your attorney. Verify with ATF and your own state before you fill out one line. Nothing I name today is an endorsement. It's counter talk. Here's the reframe, and it's the reason I'm making this at all. The free stamp isn't the reason to buy one. Most folks who ask me about cans are past 50 and already asking their grandkids to repeat themselves. The tax was never the thing worth caring about. The ear is. And with $200 off the table, the arithmetic flipped on you without anybody announcing it. The mount, the adapters, the second host, the trade-up you'll be talked into, that's where the money lives now. The tax was never the expensive part. So, 7 cans, 3 rimfire, the Silencer Co. Sparrow 22, the Dead Air Mask HD, the Gemtech Outback 2, 2 pistol cans, 2 rifle cans including a .308 class Dead Air Sandman S, and the multi-caliber Silencer Co. Omega 36M. Grouped by how they're built, sealed versus take apart, direct thread versus the modular mount era, not by who buys the most ad pages. We eliminate the pretenders first, then crown the one I'd actually put my own stamp on. Don't skip. Pick 6 changes what pick 1 should be. I'm Josie Vance, 12 years behind the counter at a family shop outside Amarillo, transfers, appraisals, trade-ins, and every NFA form that came across that glass. I was trained on what carried the best margin, and now I tell people what I was trained to do. None of this is mine. It came off a laminated margin sheet taped inside our register drawer outside Amarillo. Suppressor and accessory attach sat near the top of it. So I wrote it down. It's all in my book. $27. The video is the short version. There's an audiobook if you'd rather listen at the bench. 30 days, money back, you keep it. It's there if you want it. Scan it or the links below. I won't bring it up again. Now the yardstick, and it does not move for anybody. One test. Would I hand this can to my own mother, and could she mount it, take it apart, and clean it at her own kitchen table 10 years from now without a second trip to my counter? Buy it once or buy it twice. That's the whole test. No favorites, no brand loyalty, no points for who sent me a hat. So let's start with that margin sheet, because what that column was actually pricing was never the metal in the tube, and January 1st blew the bottom out of it. Then we start throwing pretenders off the counter. That column wasn't pricing steel, it was pricing your hesitation, and the $200 tax stamp was the anchor it hung from. Here's how the anchor worked. A man walks in curious about a can, and the first number out of anybody's mouth is the government's $200. Once he'd swallowed a $200 fee for a piece of paper, every dollar after that felt small. The mount, the muzzle device, the second mount for the second rifle, the case, the cleaning kit. That's what the attached column was actually measuring, not the metal in the tube, the psychological numbness that a $200 tax created before the sale ever started. So here's the part that matters. On January 1st of this year, the federal transfer and making tax on suppressors went to zero. That came out of the law people call the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It took that tax from $200 to zero on suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and AOWs. Zero. That is the only dollar figure in this entire video I will swear to, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now the part the headlines keep fumbling, and the part that can get somebody in real trouble. The tax died, The paperwork did not. The ATF Form 4 transfer application is still required, every line of it. The fingerprint cards are still required. The passport photos, the background check, all of it still runs exactly like it did in December. And the can still gets registered in the National Firearms Act Registry, in your name, as an NFA item. That did not change, and I have seen nothing saying it will. I'm also not going to tell you approval times got faster, because that's not what this law touched, and I haven't verified a single number on it. Federal law can change again. Congress giveth, Congress can take it right back, and a 0 today is not a 0 forever. Bigger than that, several states restrict or flat out ban civilian suppressor ownership regardless of what the federal tax says. A $0 stamp does nothing for you if your state says no. So before you put money down, verify the current federal rule at atf.gov and verify your state at your own Attorney General's office. Not from me, not from a forum, not from the guy at the counter. Nothing in this video is legal advice, and nothing in it is an endorsement. These are the cans I'd have a conversation about, and that's all they are. Now, why does a dead tax matter so much to the people I care most about at that counter? Because the buyers who need suppression most are the ones who've already lost hearing they're never getting back. Men in their 60s who spent 30 years in a duck blind with nothing in their ears. They'd stand at my counter, lean in, and ask me to repeat the price twice. And then that $200 number would land and they'd say they'd think about it. They never came back. That barrier is gone now, which means the only thing standing between a lot of folks and protecting what's left of their hearing is picking the right can, and that's where the upsell lives. So here's my yardstick, and it does not move for the rest of this video. No favorites, no exceptions. Would I hand this can to my own mother, and can she mount it, take it apart, and clean it at her own kitchen table 10 years from now without a second trip to my counter? Buy it once, or buy it twice, that's the whole test. Everything else, the finish, the marketing, the guy in the ad wearing a plate carrier at a range in Arizona, is noise. Two things get a can thrown off this counter fast. Sealed construction you cannot service, and a proprietary mounting system that quietly obligates you to buy that brand's muzzle devices forever. That second one is the modern version of the margin sheet. The can is the razor, the mounts are the blades, and there is a blade for every rifle you own. And one hard rule for this list, I am not quoting you a street price, not one. Not for the Sparrow, not for the Sandman, not for any of them. Suppressor pricing moves constantly, dealer to dealer, month to month, and the fastest way to lose your trust is to hand you a number I haven't confirmed on a live dealer listing myself. So I'll tell you what tier A can lives in, what it's built to do, and how it measures against the mother test. You'll bring the price. Let's get to the 7. Except before we get to the 7, 4 cans come off the counter, not because they're bad, I want that clear before I say another word, but because they don't survive the yardstick. And the yardstick never moves. Could my mother mount it, take it apart, and clean it at her own kitchen table 10 years from now without driving back to see me? That's it. That's the whole test. First one off the counter, the Rugged Suppressors Razor 22. It's a real product. It's a lightweight modular rimfire can, and Rugged builds honest hardware. I've had one apart on my bench, and the machining is not the problem. The problem is modularity. You pay for the ability to run it short or long, and in 12 years behind that counter, I can count on one hand the customers who ever actually reconfigured a modular can after the first month. Modularity is a feature you buy once and use never, and every extra threaded joint is one more thing my mother has to line up correctly at that kitchen table before she can call the job done. Second off the counter, the Yankee Hill Machine Turbo K compact 9mm can, part of YHM's Turbo series, and it's aimed squarely at handgun hosts. Nothing wrong with the steel. Here's the structural issue. A compact pistol can is a specialist, and a specialist is exactly the wrong first purchase for somebody who just found out the federal stamp is free and wants one can to do the most work for them. If your first can only quiets your pistol, you're going to be standing back at my counter inside a year asking about a rifle can. Buy once or buy twice. That's the whole test, and this one buys twice. Third, the Griffin Armament Optimus 9. Modular 9mm design with a taper mount system, and the engineering is genuinely clever. This one gets eliminated for what it attaches to, not what it is. Proprietary and taper mounting systems are the quiet trap in this whole industry. The can is a one-time purchase. The mount ecosystem is a subscription. Every host you add wants another company-specific adapter. 10 years out, my mother isn't cleaning a suppressor at her kitchen table. She's on the phone with me asking which of 5 little steel donuts goes on the .22. Fourth, and this one's a whole business model rather than a single can, the Silencer Central Banish 2, 2-3 and the direct-to-consumer bundle it comes wrapped in. Silencer Central handles the NFA paperwork for you. That's a real service, and I will not pretend otherwise. A lot of nervous first-timers got their first can because somebody walked them through the Form 4. But you're paying a concierge premium built into the product price. That premium made real sense when the federal transfer stamp cost $200 and the whole thing felt like a legal minefield. Now that the federal transfer tax on suppressors sits at 0 as of this year, the math shifts. Same paperwork, same background check, same registry, but the barrier that made handholding worth a premium just got a lot smaller. And verify that for yourself before you spend a dime. Check atf.gov and your own state's attorney general, because federal law changes and state law is its own animal entirely. So that's 4 off the counter. Modularity you'll never reconfigure, mounts that marry you to one catalog, and a service premium priced for a barrier that just came down. And I want to be careful here, because none of that is a person's fault. Nobody at that counter is lying to you. They're working a margin sheet and an 18-month product cycle handed down from a manufacturer who needs something new in the catalog every fall. You're just standing on the wrong side of both. I know because I was trained to work that same sheet, which is why the yardstick doesn't move and there are no favorites. Now let's get to the ones that survive it. We start in the oldest and simplest design era of the whole list, takedown rimfire cans. Nothing exotic, nothing modular, just a tube that comes apart in your hands. And I put rimfire first on purpose because rimfire is where the hearing argument gets won cheapest. The .22 rifle is the gun your dad still shoots, the one your wife will actually pick up, and the one your grandkids learn on. There's a mechanical reason rimfire cans come apart too. Unjacketed lead and dirty .22 ammo pack a suppressor with fouling, so a rimfire can that seals shut is a rimfire can you eventually throw away. So the yardstick doesn't move here. Would I hand it to my mother, and can she mount it, take it apart, and clean it at her own kitchen table 10 years from now without a second trip to my counter? Number 7 is the Gemtech Outback 2. It's a .22 LR rimfire can that's been in the catalog for years, and the industry has quoted it for a long time as one of the lower-cost entries in the whole rimfire category. I'm not going to give you a number off the top of my head because suppressor street pricing moves and I'd rather be honest than precise. Call a licensed dealer, get a live quote on an Outback 2 today, and remember the federal transfer tax on that quote is now $0 instead of $200. What earns the Outback 2 its spot is that it's dead simple. There's very little to it, and simple is exactly what survives 10 years of a 68-year-old cleaning it herself. The flaw is that it's entry tier, and entry tier means you're buying the floor of the category, not the ceiling. If you know you'll shoot a lot of rimfire, look one notch up before you file. Number 6 is the Silencer Co. Sparrow 22. This is a dedicated rimfire can. Silencer Co. didn't adapt it from a centerfire tube. They built it as a .22 can, and they built it around the owner servicing it. That distinction matters more than the spec sheet does. A dedicated rimfire design assumes from day one that it's going to get filthy and that a regular person is going to open it up. Same rule on money. I won't quote you a Sparrow 22 price I can't stand behind. Pull a current dealer listing, and again, the $200 federal stamp is a 0 on that paperwork now. Where the Sparrow gives ground is bulk. It is not the slimmest tube on a slender .22 rifle, and if you're mounting it on a light bolt gun, you'll feel it out front. Number 5 is the Dead Air Mask HD. This is the user-serviceable rimfire can I've had apart on the counter more times than any other tube in this video, and it is the easiest of these 3 to clean at a kitchen table. It comes apart clean, the parts go back together the way your hands expect them to, and that's not a small thing when the person doing it has arthritis and reading glasses. Against the yardstick, the Mask HD is the first can on this list I'd hand my mother without a caveat. She mounts it, she opens it, she cleans it, she's done. No second trip to my counter. Price, same answer. Confirm it on a live dealer listing today rather than trusting a number I read 6 months ago. What I can tell you is what the government now charges to transfer it, and that figure is 0. Now the part nobody selling you a can says out loud. Naming these 3 is not an endorsement. The Form 4, the background check, and the registry are all still in place, and your state can ban civilian suppressors no matter what the federal tax says. Verify current federal law through atf.gov and check your own state before you put money down. Federal law changes, and the man behind the counter is not the one who has to live with your paperwork. Now we move into a different design era, and it's the one where the yardstick bites hardest. Put a suppressor on a tilting barrel handgun, a Glock, a SIG, most any modern service pistol, and the extra weight hanging off the muzzle keeps the barrel from unlocking the way it was designed to. The fix is a booster, sometimes called a Nielsen device or a linear inertial decoupler. It's a spring-loaded piston inside the back of the can that lets the barrel do its little tilt and cycle the slide. Here's why I'm dwelling on that. A booster is a moving part. A moving part is a wear part. And a wear part is the exact hinge the upgrade cycle swings on. Because if you can't take it out and clean it yourself, somebody else gets paid every time it gums up. So the yardstick doesn't move. Would I hand this can to my own mother, and can she mount it, strip it, and clean it at her own kitchen table 10 years from now without a second trip to my counter? Buy it once or buy it twice. No favorites. Number 4 is the Sig Sauer SRD9. It's a 9mm pistol caliber can, direct thread, and that phrase is doing a lot of work. Direct thread means it screws onto your threaded barrel, and that's the whole attachment story. I'm not going to quote you a street price on this one, and I want to be straight about why. Suppressor pricing moved hard when the transfer tax dropped, and any number I say today can be stale by the time you're standing at a counter. Pistol cans in this class have generally lived in the several $100 range, but you get the real figure off a live dealer listing. What I will tell you is the part that doesn't change. The federal transfer tax on it is now $0. That's the whole reason this conversation is happening in 2026 instead of never. Against the yardstick, the SRD9 scores well on simplicity. Direct thread on a PCC, a pistol caliber carbine that doesn't have a tilting barrel, means no booster to fuss with at all. Screw it on, shoot it, take it off. The flaw is the same as the strength. Direct thread is simple, but it's also slow. You're unscrewing a hot can every time you want it off, and if you're running it across a pistol and a carbine, that's a lot of threading and unthreading with your fingertips. Number 3 is the rugged Suppressors Obsidian 9. Compact 9mm, built for pistol and PCC hosts, and it's the can I've had sitting on the counter right beside an SRD9 more times than I can count while somebody made up their mind. Same pricing honesty here. I'm not quoting you a figure I can't stand behind. Call a dealer, pull up a current listing, and get the number from somebody who has one in the case. The transfer tax line on the paperwork, though, reads 0. Where the Obsidian 9 pulls ahead is the Can She Service It test. I've had this one apart on the counter, and the design is built to come apart. Rugged builds these to be user serviceable, which on a pistol can matters more than almost anything else. That's not a nice to have. 9mm is dirty, subsonic ammunition is dirtier, and lead and carbon buildup inside a pistol can faster than most people expect. A can you can't open is a can that eventually becomes somebody else's problem, and their invoice. The honest flaw on the Obsidian 9 is that modularity costs you something. More parts, more threads, more places to check torque before you go shoot. If you're the kind of shooter who never wants to think about a can again, direct thread may suit you better. Between the two on my yardstick alone, the Obsidian 9 edges it. Because 10 years from now, on a kitchen table, my mother can open it. That's the test, and the test doesn't move for brand names. And say it with me one more time before we go to picks 2 and 1. Nothing here is an endorsement. You confirm current pricing with a live dealer, you confirm suppressors are legal where you live, and you confirm the Form 4 process yourself at atf.gov. The tax is 0. The paperwork is not gone. So here's the last design era on the list. The modern centerfire rifle can. This is the one that used to be gated behind money, and it's the one where a free stamp is worth the most. Think about what the old $200 tax actually did to a rifle shooter. It didn't just tax the can, it taxed the registration, so every additional tube meant another $200 out of pocket on top of the purchase. That's why guys ended up with one can and a compromise. One tube for the deer rifle, the AR, and the Magnum, whether or not it was right for any of them. With the transfer tax at 0, the math changes. But so does the temptation, because the industry would love for you to register 4 cans instead of 1, and the yardstick still says buy once, buy right. 1 yardstick, and it never moves. Would I hand this can to my own mother, and can she mount it, take it apart, and clean it at her own kitchen table 10 years from now without a second trip to my counter? No favorites up here either. Number 2 on the list is the Dead Air Sandman S. It's a 7.62/.308 class centerfire can, built around AR-10 and bolt gun hosts, and it is about as blunt instrument durable as this whole category gets. I've had a Sandman S apart across the counter more than once, and the word that comes to mind is stout. It's a welded, heavy-duty design. This isn't a can you take down at the kitchen table. And dead air doesn't pretend otherwise. So that's the honest flaw against my yardstick. It scores high on, she'll never wear it out, and lower on, she can service it herself. Because centerfire rifle cans in this class largely aren't user serviceable. The carbon burns off, it doesn't get scrubbed off. Price. I'm not going to hand you a number I can't stand behind, and I could not confirm a current 2026 street price on this one. The Sandman S has historically lived in the serious centerfire tier, not the rimfire tier. Call your dealer and get it in writing. What I can tell you flatly is the federal transfer tax on it in 2026 is zero. That $200 that used to sit on top of the sticker is not in the equation anymore. And number 1, the crown goes to the Silencer Co. Omega 36M. The multi-caliber can, rated across a wide caliber range, riding Silencer Co.'s ASR mounting system. Here's why it takes the top spot and nothing else on this list could. The 36M is modular. It configures short or long, and the ASR mount lets you move it between hosts instead of buying and registering a second tube for every rifle you own. That is the exact answer to the yardstick question. Will she ever have to buy a second one? On this can, flat no. And that's the only no on the whole list. It's also the answer to the villain we've been circling all video. The upgrade cycle only works if you keep coming back, and a multi-caliber can on a common mount is the single hardest thing to sell somebody a replacement for. Nobody at that counter is lying to you when they walk you toward 3 dedicated cans. They're working a margin sheet, and 1 modular tube is a worse quarter for them than 3 registrations. Same rule on money as everything else. I could not verify a current street price on the Omega 36M for 2026, and I'm not making one up. It sits at the premium end of the rifle can market, and your dealer's written quote is the only number that counts. Now the part I'm going to repeat until you're sick of me. Nothing in this video is an endorsement, and I don't get a cut of any of it. Verify suppressors are legal where you live. State law can restrict or ban them no matter what the federal tax says. Verify the current Form 4 requirements and current federal law yourself at atf.gov, because law changes and this video doesn't. The transfer tax being zero does not delete the background check, the Form 4, or the registration. It deletes $200. That's the whole change, and it's still the biggest one this category has seen. So that's the 7. Same yardstick on every one of them. Does this can do the job you actually bought it for without you paying for a feature you'll never use? The yardstick never moved, and I don't have favorites. Before you do anything, hear this part again, because it's the part the excitement makes people forget. The fee is what changed, the paperwork did not. You still file the Form 4, you still sit for the background check. That can still gets registered in the NFA registry with your name attached to it forever. And I'm not your lawyer. Federal law changes and state law is its own animal. Some states restrict or flatly ban civilian suppressor ownership no matter what the federal tax says. Verify current law through atf.gov and your own state attorney general before you put money down. Nothing I named here is an endorsement. Those are 7 real cans I've had apart on the counter and had customers come back happy about. That's all that is. Now tell me where I'm wrong. With the stamp costing nothing, is a dedicated rimfire can like the Mask HD still worth burning a Form 4 on at all? Or should every first-timer skip straight to something like the Omega 36M and cover the whole safe with 1 registration? I've got an opinion. I want yours in the comments, because the counter-argument on this one is genuinely good. Next one. The threaded barrel handguns actually worth building a suppressor host around in 2026, ranked on this exact same yardstick, and one of them is a gun I spent 12 years being trained to talk people out of. Buy once, buy right, shoot safe, buy smart. I'll see you at the counter.